Hey, welcome back to Compounding Quietly. Most investors lose more money waiting for the right moment than they ever lose buying at the wrong one. That sounds backwards, but it isn't. A lot of people are sitting on cash right now, waiting for a signal that never quite arrives. And the longer they wait, the more it starts to feel like patience, when it's actually just hesitation wearing a calmer name. So let's think through this together. Right now, the mood among investors is split in two directions. Some people feel like they missed the entry, so they're frozen, watching prices move without them. Others feel like a drop is coming, so they're holding cash, waiting for a number that confirms they were right to wait. Both groups are doing the same thing under different stories. They're trying to solve a timing problem with more information, when the real problem isn't information at all. Picture an investor who's been watching a long-term ETF position for 3 months. Every time it dips, they think, "This is it. This is my entry." Then it dips a little further, and the thought becomes, maybe I should wait for the actual bottom. Then it recovers, and the thought becomes, I missed it again. This isn't a strategy. It's a loop, and the loop repeats. Because the criteria was never defined in the first place. Here's the part that matters. The market will never confirm that. You're making the right decision before you make it. It only gives you a price, a chart, and a headline. Everything else, the certainty, the timing, the sense that this is the moment, that has to come from you. And it can only come from you. If you've already decided what you're looking for before the moment shows up, that re-anchoring point is worth sitting with for a second. The question was never, is this the right price? The question is, what is the criteria I'm using to decide? And most people never actually answer that. Let's get into what that criteria actually looks like. The first thing to separate is accumulation phase from distribution phase, because the right entry looks completely different, depending on which one you're in. If you're in the accumulation phase, you are buying assets and reinvesting income, and your goal is growing the size of the position over years, not getting a great print on any single day. If you're in the distribution phase, you are living off the income that position produces, and your concern isn't the entry price at all. It's whether the income stream is stable enough to support your spending. Picture an investor in their 30s, still working, still contributing every month. For that investor, a lower entry price isn't even bad news. It means the next contribution buys more shares, and the income those shares eventually produce grows from a larger base. Their reaction to a dip should be closer to indifference than panic, because the dip isn't threatening their plan, it's feeding it. Now picture an investor in their early 60s, drawing income from that same kind of position. For them, a sharp drop does matter, not because the entry price changed, but because their income coverage ratio is the thing actually at risk. Their criteria has nothing to do with finding a perfect entry, because they're not entering anymore. Their criteria is whether the income still covers what they need it to cover. There's a related risk that makes this even clearer, and it's called sequence of returns risk. It sounds technical, but the idea behind it is simple. The same average return over the same number of years can produce very different outcomes, depending on when the losses happen. Picture two investors who each averaged the same return over 20 years. One of them hit a sharp downturn early while they were still contributing new money every month. The other hit that same downturn right after they retired and started drawing income instead of adding to it. The first investor barely notices it in hindsight, because new contributions kept buying shares at lower prices the whole way down. The second investor feels it permanently, because withdrawals during a downturn lock in losses that contributions never had to lock in. Same market, same average return, a completely different experience. And the only thing that changed was timing relative to the phase they were actually in. This is exactly why a single, universal idea of the right entry falls apart under any real scrutiny. The investor still contributing should almost welcome a downturn, because it's quietly working in their favor. The investor withdrawing needs a different kind of preparation entirely, one built around keeping enough of a buffer that a downturn never forces a withdrawal at the worst possible time. Neither one needed a perfect entry. Both of them needed criteria that actually matched the phase they were in. This is the part most people skip. They treat the right entry as one universal goal, when it's actually two completely different jobs. depending on where you are in the timeline. Coming back to the original question, the issue was never finding the perfect entry. It's that nobody defined which entry even matters for their specific phase. Let's look at how this plays out with comparison, because criteria becomes obvious once you compare it against the alternative. An investor without defined criteria checks prices daily, and every checked price becomes a new referendum on whether they're behind or ahead. An investor with defined criteria has already decided in advance what triggers a buy, what doesn't, and what simply gets ignored. The difference isn't intelligence, and it isn't access to better information. It's that one of them turned a recurring emotional decision into a standing rule, and the other one relitigates the decision every single day. Think about what that does over a year. Picture the investor without criteria, opening a price app first thing in the morning, before coffee, just to see where things stand. Some days that number ruins the rest of their morning, and other days, it gives them a brief lift that fades by lunch. Either way, nothing about their actual plan changed, only their mood did. The investor without criteria makes the same decision 50 separate times, exhausted a little more each time. The investor with criteria makes it once and then simply executes it on schedule. That's not a small difference. That's the entire reason behavioral consistency outperforms most attempts at perfect timing, because consistency doesn't require you to be right about the market. It only requires you to follow the criteria you already set on the day you said you would. Judgment direction here is straightforward. If you don't have a defined entry criteria yet, build one before you build a price target. Decide what evidence would actually change your mind, not what price would feel satisfying to buy at. A satisfying price is an emotional reward. A clear criteria is a decision you can repeat without re-feeling the discomfort each time. There's no version of investing where the discomfort fully disappears. There's only a version where you've already decided how to respond to it, so it doesn't get a vote every time the market moves. The market is going to keep doing what it does, offering no confirmation, no perfect window, no moment that announces itself clearly. That was never going to change, and waiting for it to change isn't a strategy. What you bring to that uncertainty is the criteria. The standing rule you built before the emotion showed up to argue with you. The entry was never the hard part. Knowing what you were actually looking for, that was the hard part. And that's the part worth solving first. Slow and steady isn't a limitation. It's the strategy. Compounding quietly. Slow, steady wealth building. If this helped, subscribe and leave a like. Everything here is for informational purposes only. All final decisions and responsibilities remain with you. Thanks for spending time with Compounding Quietly today.